Welcome back to another episode of the Canon on the Boom and Bust channel. I'm your host Terry, and today doing a spoiler review of Thor: Love and Thunder. Usually I do an initial reaction, I go back and see it again, do my final review. However, I'm not going to see this movie again, so that should tell you already a little bit how I feel. Overall, you know what? Going into Thor: Love and Thunder, I had not an apprehension about the movie. I had an apprehension about the MCU Phase 4. Now, there is a lot of different angles you could look at this, because there's the diehard MCU fanboys and girls that will justify anything the MCU does. It doesn't matter. You can't give the MCU a critique. Like, one of my favorite movies is also one of my most highly criticized movies. And that's Captain America Civil War in the MCU. That has some of probably the highest amount of plot holes next to Endgame. But I still really love it. And that type of nuance doesn't exist with a lot of fans. Once you don't like it, you're a hater and all that. But the truth of the matter is, however you want to slice it, the Phase 4 has just been different. And it's not just, well, we don't have Cap and Tony. And, you know, R.I.P. the untimely death of Chadwick and all that. And it's not just that. It's just the way it's been done. And again, there's a lot of ways you can look at it. There's people talking about Kevin Feige not having enough time to be involved because there's so many projects. And he's trying to do Star Wars. There's people talking about, again, not having the star players. There's people talking about the Disney Plus shows and the problems with that. So there's a lot of ways to look at it. But overall, I just think, for me, the Phase 4 just has felt disjointed and a little disconnected. Now, this isn't just Phase 4 for Thor. The Phase 4 disconnection is a little bit of a problem. To me, a bigger problem in the MCU comes when you have different directors bringing out different voices, which is great. But they don't always honor the material before. And one of the biggest culprits is Taika Waititi. As much as I love his work and I love what he does not follow what comes before. And so overall, you get Thor, by a lot of people's feelings, reverting back. And you know what was weird to me was Infinity War. I was on the Russos because I'm like, yo, y'all kind of redid everything that happened in Ragnarok. Literally, Odin says, are you the god of thunder or the god of hammers? He was like, the power is in you. And we saw him have no weapon and have the power. We saw, Asgard as a people, not a place, and all that. And they made so much strive. But then Infinity War ripped all that apart. Like, he lost his eye. He was okay with it. We got to give him a new eye. He lost his hammer. We got to give him Stormbreaker. Like, where was any of the power that he found without the weapon? And so I was upset with them. But now I got to be upset at Taika because he walked Thor back from all the emotional and just character development that we saw. Like, some of the stuff he does in Love and Thunder just contradicts who he became. And you watch this movie and you're thinking, what, like, is this even in the same universe? And so I think that's part of the bigger problem. Now, overall, we know what Taika Waititi brings. We know what Ragnarok was. We know what the trailer showed us. So we expected like a goofy, fun movie. And I had some laughs. I didn't have any like gut busting laughs, but I had a whole lot of really, decent chuckles. And some of the jokes they did was really funny. Again, this is spoiler. So like the stuff with Mjolnir and Stormbreaker, that was funny. It was a clever way to do that. But it was just so many things that I thought were overly goofy. And as much as the MCU likes to balance that fun family stuff, they also, I think, went a little too far with this. Even though Ragnarok was completely a comedy, it still, I think, worked and balanced itself within the MCU. This to me felt completely disjointed from the MCU. You don't learn a lot about Thor, and again, if anything, you go backwards on Thor, and then you don't advance anything in the MCU. If anything, you confuse it. So now we got Infinity, and I'm sure it's in the comics. I've seen that. That's all good. But as far as the MCU, where are we at? Are we talking about Celestials? Are we talking about Celestials and Arsham the Judge, even though Ego was Celestial and got killed by the Guardians of the Galaxy with no help from the major heroes? Are we talking about the time variants and Kang? Are we talking about the gods now? Are we talking about the other realms that exist with Miss Marvel? Like, what are we talking about? Who's running the show? What's the threat? What's the power? Who's the most powerful? I don't know. And so overall, again, we continue to really complicate and confuse the world without building it. In my opinion, we didn't really build anything with this movie. We just made it more confusing. And again, we didn't advance Thor too much. And then we bring Jane back. And look, the way they brought her back, I was worried about. Like, how did she become Lady Thor? Obviously, it was a reason, but in the trailer, she just pops up. They show us, and it kind of makes sense. Like, they're really doing some logic leaps. We never talked about what was it? Because it's Odin. Is it the Odin Force, Odin Power, whatever? We never really talked about what that is, what that can do, how that switches over to Thor. We know that Odin could talk to the hammer and, put an inscription on it, but we never said Thor could do that. All of a sudden, he said it to the hammer listened. Okay, fine. But the hammer didn't even work, which also, let's just talk about that. As much as they explain it, the hammer made it worse. It didn't help her. So I don't know how much that helps. But then you throw in the part with the kids. And again, he said the power of Thor. But yet they had the gold, Zeus thing. So I don't know. It was just really confusing because the natural question is, if you could do that, even though nobody told you could, but you knew you could do it, why didn't you do that with the Avengers? Why didn't you give them your power? Even if it was Mjolnir, like, I don't know. Like, it was just very sloppy writing. And so now, again, we get a lot of powers confused. We don't know. And Zeus got hit through the chest with his own lightning bolt, but he's still alive. So we don't know what's what. We don't know where the powers are. We don't know who's in charge. We don't know anything. It doesn't add to the MCU. As far as a actual just, Thor story, doesn't add to him a whole lot. So I just did not find a lot of purpose for the movie. As far as the movie itself, again, I think I laughed and, chuckled at a good amount. But the story itself was okay. Gore was pretty rushed, sometimes weird. And I you know what? I'm gonna be honest. I didn't like Christian Bale, and I didn't like Gore. I know Christian Bale can act. I know he's a good actor, and I know some people will say, "Well, it's the script, not the actor." I think I didn't like some of the choices made, whether that was by Bale or by the director. It just felt a little weird, and so as much as the visuals was kind of cool, they dropped the ball on Gore. Gore's not in it a whole lot. And again, same thing. They're not very concrete on what he can do, how he can do it, why he can do it. And I can't help but wonder if this is a victim of the streaming platform. Because we're watching, and it's not even Disney Plus, which is the crazy part. We're watching The Boys. We're watching Stranger Things. We're watching Umbrella Academy. We're watching whatever your favorite shows are. They have time to flesh these characters out. They have time to build storylines. But yet in these movies, stuff feels rushed. Now, that's not every movie. Some movies can, even if it's the first movie ever, it can do its thing within the runtime. It takes really excellent writing. Some movies are sequels and build off the past, and they can do their thing in a runtime. It takes excellent writing. I don't think it was excellent writing on this movie. It felt rushed. It felt like, I don't know, man. It just feels over rushed, like over relying on you already know who this character is, and it was gimmicky. That's the best way I could say it. It was gimmicky as far as the colors, the music, and the comedy, without really telling a real story, without really having good character development, without world building. It just was, it was kind of blah. Now, I love Chris Hemsworth, and I do love the style. I love the colors, the music. I love all that. So I still enjoyed it, but it just was not a great movie. So overall, I think I gave it a 76% initially. I might go roughly around a 72%. It might be a C- for me. So that's how I feel about it. But what'd you think if you saw Thor Love and Thunder? Go to the comment section, let me know. Share it around, get the conversation started. And remember, if you heard it here, it's official canon.